everyone, my name is Todd Lovell, and in this video I want to give a quick review of everything that we've been doing in ministry together over the past year and share a few things about where I think we might be headed in the years to come. As we start, I want to just give thanks to God for how He has supported and sustained us this year. It's been a powerful time for me as I've looked back through the past year and seen how God's hand has been moving, even when it seemed like nothing was happening. By all accounts, I mean, this whole Vine thing shouldn't even work at all. I mean, we started in July of 2020 when the COVID pandemic was ramping up, and it was difficult to say the least to meet new people and gather with them in new ways. You know, I often joke about how I looked through all of my church planting books and none of them had a global pandemic chapter. We've had to adapt quite a bit to this post-pandemic world, and I especially have had to learn how to think about and do church differently. You know, the Vine looks very different today than it did this time last year. Last year we leased the space we're in now, and at the time we had absolutely nothing to get started with. But through the generous donation of the Woodlands United Methodist Church in Fort Smith, we were able to get a lot of the things we needed to get started in this space, including chairs and tables, TVs and sound equipment. The Woodlands Church faithfully served for many years in the Fort Smith area, but they decided to close their doors in 2021. And it just so happened that their closing was scheduled for the same week that we were moving into our new space. And they could have sold all of their stuff to make some money, or they could have asked us to buy it from them, but they didn't. They gave everything to us for free. They wanted to bless us as we started, and it was just that, a blessing. And the Woodlands generosity will live on, and does live on, in the ministry of the Vine. You know, the first few months in our space here were spent moving in and getting everything ready for weekly worship, but that didn't keep us from worshiping and serving together. No, we held a few preview services, and we started getting out into the community to find ways to serve our neighbors. We visited other churches, and we attended community events, and we began developing our community partnerships with several local nonprofits in the area. And by the time we started meeting weekly in March, we had a group of about 25 people worshiping with us on a regular basis. And in 6 months, our group doubled to about 50 people on Sundays. But one of the things I'm most proud of at the Vine is that for all the people who connect with us on a Sunday morning, we have even more people who connect with us outside of Sundays. And our community partnerships are a huge part of this, because through our community partnerships, this congregation of roughly 50 people has packed 500 meal bags for a local food pantry. We had a community picnic with over 650 people. We hosted a sensory-friendly trunk or treat for over 500 people. And just this week, we helped distribute 30 Thanksgiving meals to our neighbors here in Centerton. And that's not to mention all of the smaller scale activities that we do every single week. Like we say here at the Vine, our worship isn't over until our neighbor is served. And we really mean that. And we commit ourselves to doing that every single week. And you know, as much as it's exciting to see the Vine impact our community every single week, it's even more exciting to hear about how the Vine is changing the lives of people who gather with us. Because ultimately, the Vine is not just another nonprofit doing good work in the community. No, we are the Church of Jesus Christ. We worship a resurrected Savior who not only wants to change the world around us, He wants to change our lives too. And we've seen a lot of life change in our people in just these few short months. I mean, we have people learning more and more about the Scriptures and committing to worshiping on a regular basis and finding time for prayer amidst their busy schedules. And just a few weeks ago, we celebrated our very first baptism here at the Vine. You see, God's not only changing our community, God's changing us. Hearts are being opened and salvation is being experienced as we worship and pray and serve together every single week. You know, this is an even bigger blessing when you realize that many of the people at the Vine either have never been in a church or haven't been in church in a very long time. But they've found a place to grow here at the Vine, and for that we give thanks to Almighty God. And you know, I can say that all I want, but I think maybe it would be better if you just heard from some of our people, to listen to how they tell their stories and how God is using the Vine to renew their hearts and restore their faith in the church.
I went to Catholic school, so that's kind of where my first experience that I remember with church was. I got baptized when I was 11. I went through confirmation and all the things that you do within the Catholic Church for that.
I would call it a standard for the time kind of experience, went every Sunday. If there was something going on Wednesday nights, we were in the youth program. It was definitely part of life.
Then I moved for college to NWA, and I sort of church hopped. I didn't and couldn't find a Catholic church that I loved, so I ended up in the Methodist church in Fayetteville for quite some time. And really, I would say throughout my college years, it was on and off. It was mainly Sundays. There was no real connection to the church. I went with friends or by myself. When I moved to the Bentonville area, I didn't really have a church. Josh and I met. We wanted to find a church together, and again, we sort of church hopped, sort of looking for that right fit between what we both grew up with and what we wanted. I remember Josh coming home and saying, Pastor Todd is in our BNI group, and he has this really cool outlook on church, and I think that we should, give it some thought. And that was kind of from there.
Yep. Really sparked my interest. I'd never heard of anything like that. It didn't sound like any church that I knew of, knew about. It felt like it aligned with what I felt like church should be. I think the simplest way I can sum it up and example that I can give is, I've always looked at these, especially up here in Northwest Arkansas, these mega churches, these huge big buildings that you look at that and you say, man, how much money did it cost to build that? And if the church is really doing what it's supposed to be doing, how better could that money have been spent to have a positive impact on this world? The Vine is going to be about impact and changing people's lives and bringing people to the Lord, and actually not just saying it, but the action behind it and doing it.
We have 2 girls. Poppy is 2 and Caroline is 10. Caroline is definitely more engaged and interested in the church aspect and the Bible, obviously, than Poppy is. I will say that Poppy has started to pray because we pray at dinner time, and now she will put her hands together and say, pray. It's great that the kids can be included in stuff like the flowers for mom and the donuts for dad, and they get out there and hold the signs, or they do stuff like that, and that even small things like that show them that they can have a presence in the community and in people's lives. At some point we started outsourcing all the things that the church was doing, and we've outsourced them to all other types of agencies, government, school, whatever it is. So I think if I was talking about the Vine, I would talk about that we're trying to bring community in closer, trying to get back to some of those original ways that the church was viewed and some of the original purposes of a church. It wasn't just church on Sunday. It was an all-encompassing safe net, for anything that was going on.
This is absolutely not what you're used to, and if you just want to go to church on Sunday and sing some songs and feel good about yourself, that's really not, it's not really what we're trying to do. But if you want something deeper, you want something more, and you want to be a part of something that, to my knowledge, is not being done, it's an opportunity to, that you have.
We were searching for something that fit our family dynamic, and so when I went home that night, I was told Anthony, I met with Pastor Todd, asked him some questions in regards to what the Vine is doing and what they stand for, and I really feel like this is something I want to check out.
Honestly, I didn't want to do it. Like I said, I was raised in church, but church left a bad taste in my mouth.
When we attended our first service and you didn't pass around a plate to collect money, it was a shock for me, but also I walked out feeling like, wow, this is really cool. There's an opportunity to give if you can, but Pastor Todd has never led with, okay, now you're gonna bring out your checkbooks and you're gonna give money. It's always been like, here you go, you can give if you can, so that I've never felt pressure to attend based on whether or not I can give.
I come from a background where the offering plate was passed around with the pastor's truck payment in it. And certain people each time would be expected to pay the $700 note. And, you know, to see people, a church that wanted to give and not just take is very important.
We were in worship, and my girls are 10 and 12, and in the middle of song and worship, both of them, they were like grabbing me, and we were almost done with the final songs, and they're like, Mom, and I'm like, what? You know, in my zone, and they're like, we want to come back.
I would say it's the difference in what I would consider traditional church compared to this. I like the concept of stepping outside the four walls and going forth and doing what Jesus said to do and not what some pastor says we should be doing.
One of the things that I actually really like is I can come dressed casual, and most of the mornings when we come to church, I've just cooked breakfast and started a load of laundry, and we're rushing out the door, and I'm still doing mom duties, but I can show up and just be normal and be myself and not feel like I have to be put together. And it takes a lot of pressure off of feeling like I have to belong into some stereotype of how a church mom should be.
I would say my biggest struggle is just being comfortable back in church again. I didn't want anything to do with it. You know, I was in it from the day I was born until 11 years ago, and it's almost hard to trust people again. I feel like the Vine is here to serve God and not for finding a way for God to serve us. It's refreshing to be somewhere, to be at God's standard and not man's. I would encourage anybody who didn't want to be in that situation anymore to come in and see, hey, you know, it's not that cookie cutter, backwoods, backcountry church. It's something new that can be useful for the community, and that's where it's at. Love thy neighbor. And I genuinely feel that.
Friends, God is doing a wonderful thing in us and through us here at the Vine. I'd like to just share a bit about where I believe we're headed in the next few years, and 3 things that I think are imperative for us to be faithful in the year ahead. And those 3 things are embrace change, connect people, give boldly. Embrace change, connect people, and give boldly. First, I think for us to take the next step at the Vine, each and every one of us has to embrace change. It's been said that if you want God to move you, you have to be willing to travel light. We have to remain flexible for our ministry efforts here in the coming months and years. If the COVID pandemic taught us anything, it's that we have to be willing and able to adapt to the needs of our community and the resources that we have available. The Vine may not always look like it looks right now, and that's okay. We have to be okay with that, because our mission and our identity is still the same. Our neighbors in our community are still in need, and our God is still calling us to something bigger. And we have to have enough faith and enough trust to follow Him wherever He may lead us. Second, I want to encourage each and every one of us to connect someone you know to the Vine. Maybe you took a little while to get up the courage to attend the Vine yourself. Maybe you wanted to try it, but you just couldn't look past your own painful experiences with church. Well, if that's you, I want just to remind you that you are not the only person that feels that way. In fact, there are probably several people in your friend group and in your family who feel just like you, and all they really need is someone they trust to offer them an invitation to do church differently. So I want to encourage you to commit to, during this next year, I want you to be intentional about sharing what God is doing in your life and inviting people around you to come experience that as well. Because you know people around you who are desperate for God to do something in their lives too. And you might just be the person that God has put in their life to invite them to come to a different kind of church. And lastly, I want to encourage you to give boldly. We have a growing number of people at the Vine who are beginning to give in so many different ways, whether it's serving with us or leading a ministry or giving financially. But we're entering into a season at the Vine when your generosity is going to become vitally important in determining the type of ministry we do during this next year. Now look, I know that so many people who gather with us at the Vine are coming from church experiences where messages around financial giving have been coercive and abusive. And I hope that over the past year I've earned your trust in how we need to talk about financial giving at the Vine. So let me just say that when we talk about giving at the Vine, we're not talking about being legalistic, about giving a certain percentage or being treated differently because we give a certain amount. At the Vine, when we talk about giving, we're talking about ministry. What kind of ministry do we want to have? And I mean that question honestly and sincerely. What kind of ministry do you want us to have at the Vine? Because truthfully, I'm open to just about anything. I mean, we can have a ministry with a bunch of staff, or it can just be me. We can sign a lease and meet in a building, or we can just meet in some homes. We can have grand plans for reaching hundreds or even thousands of people, or we can just focus on caring deeply about the neighbors closest to us. And any one of those paths is a faithful way of doing church. We just need to decide, what kind of church do we want to be? And look, I know that giving financially is hard, and frankly, this is one of the hardest times to give in recent history. Inflation is through the roof, gas prices are way too high, food's too expensive. Many of us are dealing with crippling debt and soaring interest rates, and I want you to know that my family is not immune to any of that stuff too. In fact, we found it really difficult to give in the way that we wanted to give over this past year. But still, even in the midst of everything that's happening around us, I want to challenge you to give something to the Vine. Maybe that's something every week, maybe it's a monthly gift, or maybe it's just a one-time gift. I don't really care, but I want every single one of us to give something. I don't care if it's $5 a month. If that's all you can afford, then I believe that God will honor that and use it to increase the impact of the Vine. You know, up to this point, we've been supported financially by the Arkansas Methodist Conference. But I believe now is the time that we begin to take full ownership of our ministry together and begin committing ourselves fully and completely to the mission that God is calling us to. Now, we'll have much more to say about all of this in the weeks and months ahead, so I hope you'll join us as we commit once again to doing church differently in Northwest Arkansas and beyond. Of course, if you ever want to learn more about the mission and ministry of the Vine, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to hear more about your story and answer any questions that you might have. But until then, thank you so much for watching. God bless you, and we will see you in the next video.
Splendor of the King. Lord,